I feel I should have a guitar on my knee here sitting in front of this.
Has anybody got a guitar?
No, please no.
So the reason Ken's here tonight is to support the Salford Unemployed Centre that fights for all the vulnerable people in Salford and tries to organise the fight back. Whether it's benefit sanctions, whether it's people in debt, whether it's ex-offenders, or whether it's people who are unfairly dismissed, we fight for them and we represent them. Since the Tories came in, they've cut back not only services, but the funding for organisations like this. And that's why Ken's here tonight, so I want you to say thank you as well.
Oh, well. Thank you, man. Thanks so much.
Okay, first question, please.
My name's Geordie Williams, student currently studying acting. Basically, a lot of your films obviously work around working class, and obviously this is about the benefits cuts and stuff like that. A lot of it, if there wasn't so many tax breaks to rich and there wasn't so many lenient tax breaks, would you ever consider going into that sort of side of it and researching that and then making a film based around that to highlight what they like? Did you get what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
it's quite a weirdly worded question, but
I think it's the thing is if you make a film, it's like you do a theatre play or paint a picture. You have to think it's not only the idea is intellectually sound, but your guts are drawn to it as well. You know, it touches your amusement or your concern or your enjoyment of the people or the place. So it isn't when you make a film that there has to be an emotional connection as well as an intellectual one. And I just don't like the people very much. Really. So you're not. And so, I mean, the problem is when you cast those people in films where there's a character, say, you know, from an upper class background, it's really difficult. We did some films in Ireland, and some many years ago, we had to find people who, you know, from the ascendancy, from the Irish ascendancy, the landlords who'd ruled Ireland, and it was really very difficult to find them without them looking caricatures. And we went for the real thing, and they were more caricatured than if we'd had actors in, because they are. And so we got criticised. You know, you don't like these. Obviously, you don't like these characters because you're sending them up, but they were the real thing. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult. The other thing that's very interesting when you see films about the people you mentioned, and you see them all the time. I mean, so many television plays and series are about people with quite a wealthy background, but they're played by people who are very charming, and I don't know Hugh Grant, and I think he's he's good, and I respect him, and I wouldn't say anything bad about him at all. And the way he's fought the press is brilliant, so I respect him for that. But he's I don't know him, but I'm sure he's an extremely charming, friendly, easygoing person, and this comes across. But the characters he's playing have a culture which is not that at all. Yeah. Yeah. And so they have a way of smoothing the edges so that you like them, and there's something engaging and charming about them. But the reality is something very different. And so in a way that's the con trick they do. And what's interesting, there was a tradition in the theatre of having straight parts and character parts. And you'd find there used to be an old document that actors had called Spotlight, and it was full of actors would be categorised as whether they were straight actors or character actors. And you knew the straight actors played posh and the character actors played working class with an accent. And that's how traditionally it's always been seen. Straight actors are the wealthy, the comic characters, the character actors are the working class. And so, I mean, part of what we tried to do over the years is to turn that on its head, really, and say, no, this is what people are really like, and they're the odd characters. But there's a whole, it's a very interesting whole cultural development of theatre and the way characters and the way social classes are represented. And when you try to get to the real nature of the ruling class, then you find you're putting on, when you show they're really like, then they do look like caricatures. It's what they are.
Hi, Jack Marsden. I had the great privilege of working with Ken in a film nearly 30 years ago called Raining Stones.
Yeah, yes.
Best thing I ever did on my CV, by the way. An honour to be in your presence again, Ken. With the rise of multimedia and social media, do you see that the expansion of the message is actually shrunken because the powers that be still absolutely control the message and about driving us to austerity and being powerless, and it's divide and rule?
Yes, it's a complicated question, that, and I'm not sure I know the answer altogether. I mean, just before saying that, I mean, Raining Stones was written by a great Mancunian, Jim Allen, who was from Collyhurst and then lived his life in Middleton. And he lived unbelievably in a rectory. I'm not sure why, but he was a socialist, a great writer, and wonderful man. And he was even less smart than me. And when we were shooting Raining Stones, which Jack was terrific, by the way, when we were shooting Raining Stones, there was we all used to have the break, the midday break in a school or something like a school or community centre, and because it got very popular because the food wasn't too bad, and people used to turn up, and so we found we were feeding quite a lot of people, and that was fine. But it reached a point where it had all gone before the crew got there, so we had to have somebody on the door to say, "Are you from the film?" Anyway, Jim turned up, and the bloke on the door said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Jim." He said, "Oh, you're not allowed in here." He said, we're getting every scruff off the estate around here. And anyway, they finally let him in. But it's a serious question. I think they've always controlled consciousness. And particularly in broadcasting. And what's interesting, and what I found interesting, working with it for many years, is when they're confident, the people at the top, the establishment, whatever we call them, when they're confident, well, when they're confident, then you can say more than when they're worried about the outcome of a particular issue. So, for example, during the early 80s, when Thatcher was taking on the trade unions, the space about industrial issues closed down very much. And there were others of us, but several of us had programmes planned that said there was a militant working class that was being destroyed or sold out by the trade union leaders. That was prevented from being screened. Now I think they're equally concerned, and I think it's quite interesting how they do it. And I don't know how this relates to social media because it's not my forte, and I don't understand it. I can barely turn my phone on, so I'm not very good at it. But they do it now not by well, they don't get the programmes commissioned, by and large, so that they don't have to ban anything. I mean, their system falls down if they have to censor it. It means that the gatekeepers in the commissioning process have failed, because if they got to ban it, they shouldn't have commissioned it. But how they control consciousness, I think, is the questions they ask and the people they allow on, and in general, there's much tighter control of news programmes than documentaries, and there's tighter control of documentaries than there is of fiction. So you can often say something far more radical through fiction, but because it's wrapped up as a story, it doesn't often get you in the guts in the way like a news broadcast was if it were straight. So I think there's gradations of censorship or gradations of control, and the most control is on the news programmes and their key programmes like the Today programme on Radio 4, where if there's a strike, the only question is why are you holding the country to ransom, or why are you causing so much inconvenience, and so on. And there are many, we could talk about that for a long time. But I think the control of consciousness is critical in broadcasting, and I think they see it as that. And the people who are put in charge are key establishment figures that they can rely on. So the present editor of the Today programme is from the Evening Standard in London, which is a Tory paper. The Director General now, or is he chair of the board? I forget which. Anyway, Lord Hall is a Murdoch journalist who was on the Times. So they have their own in charge, and then downwards, it sort of filters into tolerance or intolerance, depending on how they feel and what the programme is. How that relates to social media, I think, there'll be people here who understand that better than me. And clearly we began by thinking this is uncensored, we can communicate and we can organise. I think the two problems is, one is it's an outlet for the most vicious abuse and the most appalling, gross attacks and obscenities, and that's horrible. And the other problem is, from our point of view, and I don't know if Alec would agree, is that it's great for getting a campaign together, but when you need a democratic organisation where there is a considered discussion and a decision that comes out of that considered discussion, then it tends to fall apart. And so it's a great agitator. It helps with education, but organising, I think, is a problem. And you've got to then collect the people you've agitated and got enthusiastic. Then you've got to work out an organisation in which everyone can play a democratic part.
Good evening. You have mentioned Jim Allen. I spoke to you a number of years ago at the AOY Festival, and I asked you what you thought his influence was on you. I don't know if you remember it, it was a long time ago. But I'm just wondering whether you realise that basically he started his fight in the mining industry at Bradford Colliery, which was down the road, and fought for many years to have this estate and this club established.
Right.
On the basis that we thought that there'd be more people coming from the areas where the pit closures was taking place, especially in Durham, Northumberland and other areas. At the time, Jim, who you talked about, started producing a newspaper around about, I think it was around about 1968, called The Miner.
It was before that.
It was before
It was
that,
long
was it?
before that.
Well,
Yeah.
you tell me the date, I'm not sure. I only went in the industry around about that time. But there was men like Jim Swan, Johnny Allen, Jim's brother, you probably remember them all, Joe Ryan and Billy Ryan were living on this estate. It seems to all been forgotten, you know. I've come back to this club after, near 50 years. And I live in West Wales. And I can't understand the difference what's taken place. This was a thriving community based on a pit. I mean, the only reason Bradford Colliery closed, it wasn't because it wasn't producing coal or it wasn't having a rundown of labour. It was because Arthur Manchester was falling down. The Phillips Park gasworks, Cheetah Mill viaduct, they were all going to go. And we actually knew about 2 or 3 years before the pit closed that was a position. Unfortunately, you might like those things. But can I ask you a quick question on the Labour Party, please? I live in West Wales, and we've got a situation there where in Wales we've got 2 social democratic parties, the Labour Party and Plaid Cymru. Plaid Cymru, I'll just explain one thing. It doesn't call for independence, it calls for a federal system, unlike the SNP in Scotland. I know you were in Scotland, Ken, so I think you can give us some outline if you would. But do you think that the Labour Party will ever take power in Britain without a federal system?
Oh golly, I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if I can widen that slightly, I think the situation with the Labour Party now is that there is a possibility, and I think I'd put it no higher than that. It's a possibility, and I think there is the beginnings of an agenda. The manifesto that we had for this last election had got some great things in it, but it's some great things, and I rejoined a little time before the election, having been out of it for 20 years. And like you, I would say this is left Social Democrats. But when you meet people, and I'm sure it's the same here, that people are up for big ideas now. People have seen such dislocation in their lives, such insecurity, such inability to plan their future, to consider a sense that their kids are going to be able to have a house, that they can have a child and see some future for them. My sense, I don't know if it's the same for you, that people are up for the big ideas. And I think we've pushed the door open, and now we've got to say, okay, now follow the logic of this. If we have no private contractors in the NHS, why do we do that? Because the private contractors are about maximising profit. That means cutting the services. That means in hiring workers that you can turn on and off like a tap. It means 0 hours. It means no security for the people doing the jobs, and a worse service. If that applies for those companies, why doesn't it apply elsewhere? Why doesn't it apply in other industries? Why doesn't it apply in big strategic industries? So in a way, we have the possibility to enlarge the discussion from rescue the social services to let's reconstruct the economy on a totally different basis. And I think we've got that opportunity, and that's the opening that we've got to drive through. That seems to me the great possibility we've got.
Hi Ken, I'm Kirsty. I'm an undergraduate actor, but with I, Daniel Blake, what an amazing film. I really relate to Hayley Squire's character Katie, with having 2 kids and the struggle and stuff like that. It's only now that I'm finding a bit of a future. But I know you come out of retirement I'm pretty sure you come out of retirement to write that. Do you think you've got another film in you? If so.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's easy enough to talk about it, really. Oh, thanks. It's easy enough to talk about it. I mean, the spirit's willing is whether I can face the alarm going off at. Hello, I'm in trouble here. Oh, sorry. We're going to end up strangling each other with this, aren't we? It's just a physical thing, really. It's just maintaining concentration for 6 months, and the alarm going off at 6 o'clock in the morning every morning, and working for a long time, and it's just maintaining the concentration. And the thing is, I work with a wonderful writer. Worked with Paul Laverty now for a quarter of a century, who's got great talent, like Jim had, man of great talent, and Paul is too, and wonderful insights. And Paul's he's a young man of 60 now, so he's got plenty of ideas in him and films, and it's just whether I can keep up with him or not. I don't know really.
Keep it in mind, Ken.
Lou?
My name's Anita Armstrong. I'm producing a film with Jack Marsden at the moment about the life of Alan Lord, Life in Strange Ways. The book is based on the book. I just wanted to ask you how hard you found it to fund your films, especially when you was younger and obviously now? And also, do you think that the Brexit is going to make a massive difference for the arts industry in this country?
I think funding of films are hugely difficult, and there's a range of budgets where some people do films for very little money, and they pursue their own projects, and good luck to them, and they really work hard, and they're often very talented. There's various levels of funding. I mean, we're at the very cheap end, where everybody's employed, obviously on good union contracts, and we observe the rules and everything as obviously people should. But there is opportunities below that. I mean only below it in financial terms, where films can get made and people give their time. Good professionals will give their time, and that's fine, provided if the film ever does make any money, everybody shares it out. And sometimes, I'm sure it wouldn't in your case, but sometimes people get ripped off. So that kind of project can sometimes have a bad reputation, but it doesn't have to have. How you raise money, we've gone to Europe always for the last 30 years really. We've gone to Europe for funding, and European film cinema has a much different attitude to cinema. Then there's a whole, I guess many people here know, many strands of European cinema that are not simply commodities, that they are there as communications or artistic expressions or whatever, or whatever you want to say. I mean, you don't have to leave your brain in the foyer when you go in. And there's a whole tradition of European cinema, and we've been lucky to fall into that and receive funding from different countries. But I say we're at the very cheap end. I mean, just to give you an example, I mean, Daniel Blake cost about £2.5 million to £3 million, which is a lot of money at one level. It's a lot of money to me, it's a lot of money to you. In film terms, it's seen as a small film of the smallest. And the average British film would be 10 million. So, and then the Hollywood films are 300 million or so. So I mean, it's a fractional. We do ours for less than 1% of what they would do it for. So it's tiny. And then again, I mean, we've been lucky in that we found a little niche in European funding, where because we've done one or two before, they'll chip in. And they didn't lose money last time, so they don't expect to next time. So on that basis, we can keep going. But it's extremely difficult, and I have no advice whatsoever, except just keep trying.
Do you think it's going to affect with the
Brexit? What the thing with, I mean, it's quite technical, but if you have a European co-production, the money. We got money from Belgium. We've had money from Belgium for quite a few years. And part of the deal is they have a fund which, if you employ Belgians on the crew, you will get money from the Belgian state to support that. And it's the same for France and maybe some other countries. And when we did a film with Eric Cantona here, and we had Belgians on that, and they were on the Daniel Blake film, and they're terrific, and they come over and with lots of Belgian chocolate, and they get very popular, and it's terrific. But the co-production treaty can stand with Brexit. But what is difficult is if free movement stops, then we would have to fill in all kinds of forms for them to work here. So it's not the Brexit as such that would stop the co-production treaty. It's the terms of free movement that would stop them working. And of course, if they don't work, then they can't get access to the money that supports their work. So that's how we think it'll affect it.
My name's Andrew. One thing that we must be realistic about the censorship, the limitations, the difficulties, but on behalf of the young, those on zero-hour contracts, we have to find a way of channeling their energies And I think in areas which we've heard from, like satire, like comedy, which are lower entry thresholds, we need to find together means of creating and encouraging their optimism, their idealism, that is not negative, that isn't bound down by the censorship of the past, and can see the opportunities of the future. How do you think you'd advise us here in Manchester, as you look towards the end of your esteemed career, at the young and the people who want to get involved? What would you say are the core values that they should carry forward?
Oh golly. Well, I think the first is just tell the truth as you see it. You know, write of your own experience, write of your neighbours. Just tell the truth and do it imaginatively and do it with fun, humour, and you know, express the tragedy of it, and just tell the stories. I mean, we need our own stories told. I think that above all. And whether you do it on a stage like this, or whether you write about it and share it on, you know, with friends, or share it on the social media, just get it out there. And if you can blag a camera and construct a film very simply, great, you know, do it. I mean, I just today, I saw an amazing film on the internet, which is being launched on December the 10th, about a child in the occupied, in the West Bank, about the arrest of children. It is absolutely stunning, stunning, and it's done very simply by a woman called, she's the producer, called a woman called Farah Nabulsi, Nabulsi, Farah Farah. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. You can't watch it and not know everything that's going on to children in the West Bank. You can do that here. You know, it's a 10-minute film. You can do it. You've got a story to tell, write it. It's done with voiceover. It's like the voice of the mother. So it's a wonderful idea. It's just the voice of the mother talking about her son, who looks about 10, in an Israeli prison, and she can't reach him, and what that mother feels. And images, documentary images of kids being arrested, and some recreation with a wonderful child actor. You could do that here. I mean, but learn about what makes a good picture, learn about light, you know, the fascinating subject, learn about framing, learn about a lens, what lens to use, learn about how light strikes people, frame it, learn about editing, just by watching good films you like, you know, what's the point you've cut at? What's the point how long is the shot? Just study a film you like. It's not easy. It's not difficult, rather. It's not difficult. You can see it quite simply. And do it, you know, and do it and share it, and then get it into film festivals if they're there. And we'd all benefit from it, because we need each other's stories. We really need each other's stories.
Hi, my name's Lisa Scully, and I'm reader in social policy at the University of Salford. I lead a research group at the university that's focusing on the impact of welfare reform, and I'm part of a huge national research project looking at the impact of welfare conditionality. Quite naively, I believe in evidence-based policy making, and I've kind of sometimes got a thankless task of trying to get policymakers to listen to the huge evidence base that's out there on the impacts. And I guess I just wondered how policymakers, or whether they have actually engaged in the message that you're telling people, particularly through I, Daniel Blake. Have they engaged with that? Have you had success in trying to get people to listen at policymaker level?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, the answer is exactly as you would expect. Debbie Abrams came and saw it, and she was terrific. Not as a result of the film, because they had decided this anyway, that the work capability assessments would stop. They will end. And what Labour has called the punitive sanctions would end. And she knows I have a problem with this, because what are sanctions if not punitive? there's no such thing as a sanction which isn't punitive. That's the name. The clue is in the name, isn't it? Sanction. Stop. So Paul Laverty, who wrote the script, we both think financial sanctions have to end. Because what's the crime you're going to punish with hunger? What crime is so bad that you're going to starve people? So the sanctions should end. And I think, yes, if people are cheating, yes, there's got to be some way of accepting that and dealing with that. Why not try that kind of various different punishments on the tax dodgers? Let's see what works, and then we'll apply to the sanctions.
Any volunteers to take on the tax dodgers?
Sorry, just one quickly. But we showed it, of course, we were asked, just quickly, we were asked if, by the BBC, would we get put on a showing for Ian Duncan Smith and then speak to him? And we said no. No. He said he knows what's going on. If he doesn't know what's going on, he's too incompetent. And if he does know what's going on, he's too brutal to be a minister.
Okay, privilege to me. I'm Bill Spivey. I'm a manager in Prison and Probation Service. I'm coming from that sector, and I think we all know the challenges that we're facing for the people in our care and the people who work for us at the moment. I'd just like to say what a wonderful film The Angel's Share was, because I recommend it if anybody's not seen that. It was great to see a film that actually looked at the offender and the reasons why they were going down that path. But it looks also at the victims, and there's a fantastic scene where he has to confront his crime, and he sees the implications of that. And there's also sympathy for the staff and a recognition of the hard work they do. And my question was going to be, do you think there's a similar tale to tell in the prisons? But perhaps these people on sat next to me how to make that, I don't know. Because it'd be very nice, to actually see, because so many films that set in prison, they're about the glamorising of crime, they're not really recognising that the reality of life there is very, very difficult. There's bullying, there's a lot of boredom, there's a lot of stress as people are getting ready to go back. And the mind is set on building that links with the community, and I just think it'd be lovely. We have so many films about prison. It'd be lovely to see, apart from this film that's coming out, a film that really tackles that.
It's interesting, there's actually two people here from the BBC Science Unit who we've been in discussions with and Ken's spoken to, and I hope they watch that film that you mentioned, because I thought it was brilliant as well. Okay, comrades, we've had a tremendous session. Ken's going home in a minute, back to the sunny south. I think it's been a tremendous, I think the contributions from the floor have been staggering, but let's not go home without making a commitment to change the world, because that's what Ken is painting a picture. We need to change the world, we need to unite together. As Jason said, everybody should be in a union. There's a union for everything. You mightn't believe this, but every single professional footballer is a member of their union. Even the ones on millions, they're in the union. I don't understand why anybody isn't. I just want you to give a standing ovation.
Can I say one thing before you finish? I could hear you rounding things up. I just want to say, it's a real privilege to come. It's a real privilege to hear you speak, and well done to Alec and everyone who's working on the project. It's a brilliant project, and I'd take my hat off to you, Alec, for doing it. But the other thing I wanted to say is, I'm sitting on stage, but everyone here has the experience, and what they say is as valid as anything I've said. So I feel somewhat embarrassed to be in this hierarchical position. But anyway, it's been such a privilege to come. Well done, and thank you, Alex.